To make marmalade, you'll need a stainless steel preserving pan, a ladle and a funnel, some clean jam jars, some wax discs and new lids, ideally. You'll also need some muslin and some cotton string. Some people like to use a jam thermometer. It's useful if you're new to jam and marmalade making as it gives you the right temperatures for setting. It's more useful though to learn the signs and be able to test your set yourself. For this recipe, we're going to use 3 pounds of Seville oranges, the juice of 2 lemons, and 5 pounds of sugar. It's up to you whether you want to use raw cane sugar, which is less processed, or British produced beet sugar, which has done far less miles around the world. Both will give you a great result. The final ingredient is 2 cans of apricot halves in syrup. You'll need the apricots and the syrup. On the first day, you need to remove the twigs and wash the fruit well. Add 4 pints of cold water and simmer covered for 1 hour. This is an old family recipe and one of our favourites, which I hope you'll enjoy. This is a leisurely recipe that's made over 3 days. It's great if you have no time to set aside a whole day for marmalade making, and that's why I think I go back and make this every time. After you've simmered the oranges for an hour, remove them from the heat, leave them in the pan to cool, and we'll come back and do the next stage tomorrow. On day 2, you need to remove the pith and the pips from the oranges, tie them into a muslin bag, and then chop the oranges, the orange peel, down to the consistency you prefer. That can be super fine or chunky or even liquidized so that you have no bits at all. Another reason I think I like this recipe is because you boil your oranges whole. So when you do come to chopping the peel, you're chopping a cooked orange, which is so much easier than having to chop a lot of fresh oranges. Sevilles are particularly tough and it can be quite hard on your hands. If you find chopping a lot of things hard, you can put them through a food processor at this point. It would also give you a very, very fine shred. If you're wondering why we're meticulously saving the pips and pith into a piece of muslin, it's because those are what are going to help make our marmalade set. They're our precious ingredient, so we're retaining those as we work. The muslin square I'm using is cotton muslin. If you buy a metre, you can keep it in your drawer, but I wash out my squares and reuse them. They wash well in boiling water in the sink, and then you can just dry them out and iron them, and they're ready for next time. When you come to tying up, make sure you're tying up with cotton string. It's going to go into the food, so you need to make sure you're not using anything toxic. There's quite an art to tying up a muslin bag and making sure there's no holes for pips and pith to escape. This recipe doesn't require you to leave the bag in to boil, but others do. So if you can get good at doing this, it'll save you a lot of pips ending up in your marmalade. I'm also quite meticulous at tucking in all the ends of the muslin so as you don't get any frayed bits escaping. As you tie it up, make sure you use a nice long length of cotton string so that you've got plenty left to make a loop to hook over the edge of your pan. In this instance, as I said, not so important, but if you were boiling this bag in your marmalade, having something to fish it out the hot liquid with is really handy. Finally, pour all the juice that's escaped and dangle the pip bag into your mixture, put the lid back on, and we're going to leave it overnight. This will allow the pectin time to draw out of the pips and pith. On the final day, we're going to go for achieving the perfect set for your marmalade. I think this is what stops a lot of people making marmalade, is because they're terrified of ending up with a runny mess or something that's so solid that you can't eat it. Actually, nothing's wasted. You can always use marmalade in recipes afterwards, even if it doesn't set perfectly, or just eat it anyway. But it would be good if I can show you how to achieve that perfect set. So what we need to do is open up the muslin bag into a stainless steel sieve and basically squash all the juice and pectin away from the pips. So you're going to throw the pips away in a minute, but you want as much of that pectin as possible in your marmalade. Add your 2 tins of apricots, chopped roughly, in their juice, and the juice of 2 lemons. Return your preserving pan to the heat and boil for 5 minutes. Meanwhile, weigh out your 5 pounds of sugar into an oven-proof dish and pop it in the oven at 50 degrees. After 5 minutes of boiling, remove your marmalade from the heat to add the warm sugar. There's a good reason for this. You don't want your sugar burning as it's trying to dissolve. The warming helps the sugar part dissolve before you add it to the liquid. You then stir really gently, making sure that all the crystals of sugar dissolved before you turn the heat back on. When you're happy that the sugar's completely dissolved, return it to the heat and bring your marmalade to a rapid boil. So bring it to a boil and then make sure it's a rapid boil. So really bubbling strongly. Make sure the pan's right on the centre of the heat and not off to one side, and try not to have a draft through the room with doors and windows open. You need to get the pan up to 105 degrees centigrade in order to reach setting point. As soon as you achieve a rapid boil, set a timer for 25 minutes. Meanwhile, turn the oven up to 110 degrees and put your jam jars in to warm. This will also sterilise them, so your jam jars can be reused as long as they're washed or dishwashed and clean. Then all you need to do is bring them up to 110 degrees to sterilise them before using them to bottle. This will also ensure they don't crack as you put the hot liquid in. After 25 minutes, check for set. So you should notice a visible change in the liquid. Remember at the beginning the consistency was really runny and thin and it dripped off the spoon, and the boil sounded swift. Now the boil should sound gloopy and lazy and quite low. Take a spoonful of the liquid and put it onto the plate that you chilled earlier in the fridge. Return it to the fridge for a minute or so, and then bring it out and just test to see if when you push the liquid it now forms a nice skin. If not, test again in 5 minutes. If it does, turn off the heat and allow it to cool a little whilst you organise your jam jars, your ladle and your funnel. So now you're ready to bottle your marmalade. Do get rid of pets and children out of the room before you do this. Hot marmalade burns. It's horrible when it splashes up and hits you in the face, so go carefully. Finally, add some wax seals or wax discs. Seal tightly with a good lid. Well-sealed marmalade will keep up to about 3 years in a cool, dark cupboard. Finally, make yourself some pretty labels and enjoy your marmalade. Do try other recipes. Many can be made year-round as they don't require Seville oranges. But now you know the techniques, you'll be able to get the perfect set with every recipe.